in my driveway right now stands Bernie Kosar. So my name's Chris McNeil, better known as at reflog_18 on Twitter, and this is Into the Stands.
What's going on, guys? If you have a Twitter account and are a Cleveland sports fan, you definitely know who today's guest is. Chris McNeil has made a name for himself on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. With over 500,000 followers, chances are you have been on Twitter. You've seen his post. Chris, how you doing, man?
Yeah, for better or for worse, you've seen some of my posts probably. I literally litter the inner belt that is Twitter or X with my tweets. But I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How about yourself? We got a lot of news this week in Columbus, and
It's
so
been a
it's
crazy week.
yeah, it has been. So that makes it fun, and temperatures are starting to warm up a little bit, which is nice. And I like this time of the season.
I'm,
You got the Super Bowl, and then you have this little bit of a lull. But in that lull, you've got baseball starting
got
up.
pitchers and
You know,
catchers.
All Star Weekend now, and then
Hmm.
you're going to get the back part of basketball. And for my Cavaliers, we're hopefully going to make a playoff run, and then you're just rolling until the Masters golf starts up. Got the Kentucky Derby. I mean, you got a lot of stuff to kinda look forward to, and
And you
I always
can't forget we
appreciate
got Daytona on Sunday. If you're a
Daytona.
NASCAR guy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we were
For all you
talking about
gearheads.
rednecks a little bit before we started recording, so
Right.
get them involved.
That's right. The folks in Newark will appreciate that.
So to start out, why don't you tell us kind of a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Reflog on Twitter?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way to talk about it is to kinda tell a little bit about myself and my family. So, I was married, at the time when I started my Twitter account and what's now X, and we just had our 3rd kid, and, so I've got 3 that are now teenagers, and I started this account back 12 years ago. And at that time, my wife at the time was starting to work out more and kind of getting out of the house. And what we used to like to do together was watch sports and kind of make comments about it, and what I thought were witty comments. And some people think so, other people might think not. But as she started doing that, and I'm there with the 3 kiddos, kind of climbing all over myself, and I'm watching these sporting events, Cleveland sporting events, I'm like, I got to take to Twitter, and I've heard about this thing. Let me give it a try. And actually, the first thing I did on Twitter was I started following some of these athletes. And what's interesting now is Deion Sanders being back in the news, and obviously what he's done there at Colorado as the head coach. Back then, he put on his Twitter feed some domestic issues he was having with his then wife, and I thought, this is amazing. Like, I am getting a view into this guy's life, kind of a voyeuristic view into the life of a legitimate star here.
Yeah,
Like, what is this Twitter thing? And so that kind of captivated me at first. And then after I got kind of comfortable with it, I started putting some content out there. And then it got, mildly popular. And I think the reason it did is because, you know, uh, the tone of my account is obviously very sarcastic, right? And
mhm,
our Cleveland teams are used to, unfortunately, being through a lot of failure. So it matches up real well. You got to either laugh or cry. And I think most of the fandom understands that. And so it connected with a lot of folks. And then, of course, when the Browns eventually went, unfortunately, 0-16, we had our famous or infamous parade, and that
yeah,
kind of solidified things. And and from there, I am, like I said, either probably more infamous than famous, but certainly somebody who's now got a lot of followers on Twitter. And some people enjoy my content, other people loathe my content, but nonetheless, I'm definitely out there.
that's awesome. So why Cleveland?
Well, I come by it naturally, and honestly. So I myself was actually born down in Jackson, Tennessee. My dad is from Northeast Ohio. My mother was from Chicago. In our family, fandom goes through the male side. So my grandfather, who's from Kent, and his whole family there, all Browns, diehard Cleveland fans, Browns first. Really, my great grandfather was Ohio State first, but my grandfather's Browns first, right up there with the Indians then. the Cavaliers, everything in Northeast Ohio. So that came back that by that part of it naturally. And then shortly after I was born, we ended up moving back to Ohio and eventually getting up to the Akron area. And my parents got season tickets to the Browns, and I got my first taste of being there in the stadium, with 60,000 people at Old Cleveland Municipal Stadium. So I
Yep.
got my love for the Browns there. Came back to the same stadium for the Indians back in those days. And then, of course, I lived not too far from Richfield Coliseum. So I got to see, and happy birthday, Mark Price. It's Mark Price's birthday
Love
today,
it.
but I got to see Mark Price, Brad Doherty, Larry Nance, Craig Elo, Steve Kerr, who barely played coming off the bench back in those days before he got to the Bulls. Hot Rod Williams, RIP on that one. All those guys doing battle with the Michael Jordans of the world. So I enjoy the heck out of the Cleveland sports, always have. And so it was kind of a natural when Twitter and social media interacted with me. I'm going to talk about the things that interest me, and that is Cleveland sports.
Yeah, that's I mean, perfect, and like you said, it's not always an not always an easy thing to be
No,
a Cleveland sports fan, so you gotta
very.
have a little bit of, sarcasm and, self-loathing in there.
You gotta either laugh or cry, right? I mean, we
Exactly.
got one championship in my lifetime, 2016, beautiful, LeBron James, the Cavs, that's it. If you take out Ohio State and the couple of chips we got there, I got nothing else really. Oh, and I should do a hat tip, at least to the crew. The crew's now
Yeah,
1-3, so I'll give it to
absolutely.
the crew.
Yep,
They're here locally. I might as well, include them, and congratulations on the last one, but, it's few and far between for Northeast Ohio.
yeah, yep, and, it was all 2016. I mean, you had the Cavs championship, you had the Monsters win the Calder, and that was Stipe's year too, I think.
Yeah, it
So,
was.
2016 was a big year.
And
So
then you had, of course, the Indians at that time going to the
yeah.
World Series,
Oh my I
right?
cried.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
I'll I'm not ashamed to admit it, I cried.
So that was also I mentioned before how my mom's side of the family is all from Chicago, so they're all Cubs
Oh,
fans. So that
that
was
hurts.
very rough going back and forth, and I ended up so I had tickets to the game before. I think I had tickets to game 5, was it, or game 4? However, it was going back and forth. For the final game there, I didn't go. I stayed at home. My father went, my brother-in-law went, my brother went. I stayed at home with my mom, a Cubs fan, and I watched it in the family room. And it was probably the most awkward sports event I've ever watched with anybody because both of us wanted our teams to win so badly.
Yeah.
But, it's my mom. So it's like rooting
Yeah,
against my mom. There's only a certain amount of crap I can give my own mother. And I do give her everything up to that line. But then past that, and then when it turns at the end, mom's trying to comfort me. And that's the last thing you want. You've just lost
it's
the
like
World Series and you got
yeah.
your mom comforting you.
Who is
That
a
was
Cubs fan
who is a
and
Cubs fan.
wants to celebrate?
Right, and it's like, "Go celebrate, go celebrate, go be
It's
happy."
like the video of, Mama Kelsey with Jason after the Super Bowl last year. It's like, "Go celebrate with Trav. We'll catch up later."
It's like Curb Your
You know?
Enthusiasm with Larry David. You're allowed to
Yep.
be happy, just don't be happy around me, and certainly don't be consoling me right now, mom. Go just enjoy it. It was
Something
very awkward, it was very tough, and it just adds another chapter into my Cleveland fandom, right?
something we didn't touch on when we were talking earlier. I grew up a Michigan fan, so I
Oh,
understand the "You're allowed to be happy, just don't be happy around me."
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. This year's been
But now
fun.
but now the tide's changed. We don't have to go there though, do we?
No,
Do we
we
have to
don't.
talk
We don't.
okay.
No, we'll
Okay,
keep it
just
on
fine.
you.
That's good. Oh, yeah.
S
I appreciate that. Let's keep it on me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how has the growth and the popularity of the Twitter account impacted your life?
Interesting question. So in really unexpected ways, you start off just kind of tweeting off into a void, and you
Yep.
wonder if anybody's even really paying attention. And then eventually you get kind of a small crowd of people, and then a little bit more, but you don't really know, hey, does this really impacting anything, or does anybody even think about what I'm doing here, right? And the first time when I could tell that there was some kind of an impact was when the Browns were trying to figure out what they were gonna do with, Johnny Manziel,
Mhm.
and, I believe that was in February of the year that they released him. But the Browns were just totally silent about it. And at that time, Johnny was getting into all kinds of trouble. He was down in Texas, like driving around with his girlfriend.
Yep.
There was the story of like the wallet that got thrown out, and like he's in trouble with the cops. You're hearing all these, and all these stories just came one after another. And so it's Johnny effing football. That's JFF. So we
Mhm.
did, what was it? Johnny Free February is what it was. And it was actually the idea of my daughter. She's like, "Hey, why do you guys keep talking about this guy?" And I'm like, "Oh, what? You know what? That's a
Yeah.
good point. We're going to do JFF. Hashtag
Perfect.
JFF. We're not going
Yeah.
to talk about him." So we pledged not to do it. And I'll be darned if most of Brown's Twitter pledged along with me not to do it. And then right after that caught on, because I started having like the news coming to me, I did interviews. And shortly after that, the Browns released a statement which basically said out of the void, "Hey, we're going to deal with this player as soon as the new league year starts." So to let everybody know, and it was clearly kind of directed at us who were
Yeah.
kind of doing our silent protest. And I was like, well, that was kind of interesting. We got their attention there.
Yeah.
And of course, that kind of grew into what became the parade, right? And the 0-16 parade, which had almost happened the year before, right? We went 1-15
Yep.
the year before there. It was a miraculous Christmas Eve, and and the blessed Chargers, we blocked their field goal attempt, and we ended up winning. And I'll tell you what, I was at that game. That felt like the best Christmas ever. I had knots in my stomach about having this parade, right? I have
Yeah.
half the internet hates me, the other half loves the idea.
Yep.
And then it's like, what are we putting on? Is this really going to happen? Come on. And I was hoping for heck that we were going to win a game so I would be out of the whole parade mess, because the joke at that time had kind of run its course. It was like, okay, that was fun. All right. Do we really have to do this? No. And I raised a lot of money though at that time. So it's like, well, what do you do with the money? And
Yeah.
then, of course, we end up winning. So what I did is I donated it all to the Cleveland Food Bank. Great
Perfect.
story, right?
Perfect.
Christmas Eve, donating all this money.
Yeah.
People are eating. Everybody's happy. I'm happy. Family's happy. Everybody in Cleveland's happy. It's a great story. Takes off nationally. And I'm like, it's all done. And Merry
Yeah.
Christmas to everybody. Next year, we start off, and I think it was about the first quarter of the first game. Somebody was asking me whether the parade permits that I had from the year before were still good. And I'm like, no, we're not doing this again. We're
Oh,
not going to
no.
do this again. Sure enough, as
Yep.
you know, and history now recorded, we went 0-16 that season. We ended up having that parade. The parade came off very well. I'll tell
Yep.
you. I think people got it once the actual parade happened that, hey, this
Yep.
is number one, a cathartic thing for Browns fans. We have the rest of the country who's enjoying the NFL playoffs right now. We don't get that. We don't get that party. So this is kind of our party. And oh, by the way, it's not really a party in that sense. It's also a protest. And you
Yeah.
saw the signs, you saw the things against the Haslams, against Hugh Jackson, even making fun of Johnny Football at that time. The Swans, you saw people with like swans, if you remember Johnny Football being on
Yeah.
the Swan famously. So
Yeah.
people got really creative. They really got into it. And it was really this cathartic thing. Hey, this is great. Let's get this all done. And it ended up coming off very, very well, I thought, for what it was. And the people who understood it understood what we were doing, which was good. But man, that's really what kind of built, I guess, what was Reflog, and then it just kind of continues now to this day. It morphed into a podcast that became now a full studio up in Cleveland, up at Burke Lakefront
Awesome.
Airport. It has now morphed into 11 shows. And that's
Wow.
probably the coolest thing. Back to your original question of, where has this led you? And that's to meet a lot of my idols and a lot of the people in sports. And just like I was talking to you before this, I always enjoy kind of meeting new people and meeting people, whether they're in the media, whether they're around sports, or the athletes themselves, has
Yeah.
been really cool. We started off, it was myself and Dave McAllister. We were doing a podcast, which was a Browns post game show, and which was
Mhm.
great. We would have drunk ass fans calling in and
That's
just
awesome.
ragging on the team, and no holds barred, just let him go. And that went well. And so we thought, let's do a weekly show. We started doing a weekly show. And then a couple of years ago, Dave gives me a call on a Monday, and he goes, Chris, he said, I got something to tell you. He goes, in my driveway right now stands Bernie Kosar. And
Oh,
Bernie Kosar wants to do a podcast with us." I said, "Bernie Kosar
What?
wants to do a podcast with us?" He goes, "Wait a second. There's another car that's coming up." Somebody's getting out of the car, opening the door. Chris, I think Hanford Dixon is getting out of his car. Bernie Kosar and Hanford Dixon want to do a show
Are
with us.
you
At this
serious?
time, we had built a makeshift, and really, I say we, it was really more Dave than me.
Yeah,
Dave built pretty much the whole studio there, built it in his garage, and so we were operating out of this garage. And here, come to find out, Bernie Kosar had found out about our little enterprise through a couple of intermediaries and said, "Hey, I want to do a podcast. Let's do it with you guys." So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're producing the Bernie Kosar show, Bernie Kosar and Hanford Dixon.
that's
And,
crazy.
eventually we get some sponsors on board, so we're able to move from Dave's garage up to Burke Lakefront Airport, and now we've got a fully functional studio up there. We have 11 shows. We're on iHeart. We're on Bally's right now with many of our shows, and we're on every day. The Bally's shows, we've got Bobby Carpenter here locally of Columbus fame. Anthony Schlegel was doing the show with him. It's called the Bobby Carpenter Show. That's on Bally's. We got Josh and Maria Cribbs, and they do a show together. We got Boobie Gibson from the Cavs. He does a
Oh my
show. Yeah,
gosh,
and
talk
it's
about blast
fantastic.
from the
Boobie's
past on
World.
that
He
name.
does it with Rafa, who does all the Spanish language
Yeah.
telecasts of the Cavs, and soon will be coming to some more sports, from what I understand, which is going to be fantastic. Um, and then we've also got another great story that's come out of this whole reflog world or universe. We
Yeah.
started doing a pregame tailgate this year up there at Burke, and we set up a stage out front, and we kind of get things prepped and get everybody ready for the game. And we have different slots where we go up and we talk and kind of do our talking heads thing where we analyze the game. And I looked out in the crowd, and I'm like, I recognize that guy up front. And, I said, "White hair and really, really loud." And boy, he's cussing a lot, but I think I know who that guy is. I walk down there, I walk right up to him, and he turns around, I'm like, "Yep, that's Greg Williams right there."
Oh
Greg
my god.
Williams was down there at our tailgate, and I said, "Greg," I said, "I'd love to have you on stage with us." And that guy
Oh my
turned around, he goes, "Where's the stage?" I said, "It's right there." He goes, "Let's go." So he comes
oh
right up
my
on stage
god.
with us, starts breaking down the game. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun. And his son was there. His name's Blake, and Blake was like a linebackers coach with us and his coach with his dad throughout his tenure. And now the both of them do a show with his famous catchphrase, "Come get some." They do a show as well that you can also catch on Bally's. So
That's
it's been
amazing.
it's been so that's a long way of saying it has been a wild ride, and I
Yeah.
am so fortunate to have met so many fantastic people through this process. Who knows where it goes from here? In the early days, probably before I had the parade, it's like, hey, who knows where I could go as myself? And now it's like, no, it's really cool just having this network of folks and
Yep.
network of people that I've met. That's worth more than anything I could ever do on my own, is just having these folks that I can kind of reach out to, know in the sports world or around the sports world, that I thought was really cool. If you would have told 7-year-old me, who was there in 1986 when Mark Gastineau hit Bernie Kosar late, that guy out there would eventually be doing a podcast with you, I don't know what I would have done. My head would
Yeah.
have exploded. My young head would have exploded. And now that's where we're at. So really cool, really fun ride. So hopefully fun things continue for us. It's been great up there at Big Play, and I encourage everybody to tune in to Bally's or tune into our podcast, and look up Big Play wherever podcasts are available.
Yeah. So was the parade really like the point where your account took off, or was there something else, or was it really not like one thing, and did it just kinda grow over the years?
So I'll answer that this way, because I've had pretty consistent content. I really have over the course of the last 10 years plus, doing it on Twitter and now X. But the parade and all the build up to the parade, one of the kind of neat things that blew my mind was I went and I applied for verification back in the days when verification meant something, kids. You couldn't
Mhm.
just buy verification off of a shelf from Elon's store, that you actually had to earn it. And, of course, this was a post 9/11 world, so
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, I'm gonna host this event, this 0 and 16 parade. People are having fun with it. We're all laughing about it. But at the end of the day, we're gonna have several thousand people down there in Cleveland, and they're gonna need to have information, legitimate information about what's going on, and they need to know where to go for it. And there are a couple of knockoff reflogs out here. So I need to be verified. Otherwise, who knows what could happen?" And I sent that to the Twitter folks, and I thought, well, I'm never going to see anything come of that thing. And then one morning, I wake up and I start seeing blue checks, and I'm like, wow, look at verified accounts are retweeting me or something. And I was like, and then somebody's like, how the hell did you get verified? I was like, how the hell? I look like I'm verified. I cannot believe this. So
I'm not
as soon
sure
as I
how I
get
got verified.
yeah. So as soon as I got verified, then all of a sudden you become somebody, right? In that
Yeah.
world. So that certainly helped. And then the build up to the whole parade thing and everything since then. It's really, for anybody who's trying to do something like this, it's really just being consistent with it and really
Yeah.
being passionate about it. I have fun with it. I know people who get really consumed by what happens in that world. I just look at it as an outlet for what I'm already doing, for just the stupid things that pop in my head about Cleveland sports. I'll just throw them out there, and
Yeah.
that's been the best path for me of creating this whole thing.
So a couple questions on kind of what you just said where, people really get consumed by what happens on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any social media. So first things first, what's your approach to creating content? Is it a formula that you have of some sort, or is it just really just on a whim? You think of something, you say it, and you see something, you say it.
Yeah, my worst content is formulaic, right? If you get
Yeah.
into too much of a rut, and I'll definitely do that. I mean, and everybody does, I think, to some extent, where you have some meme or some angle that you use and use it over and over and
Mhm.
over again. And sometimes that in and of itself becomes the inside joke, and then that's
Yeah.
fine. But otherwise, it just becomes tiresome. So I try and change things up as much as I can, you know. But it's really just stuff that kind of comes to me. It's funny now rather than what it was before. Before I would make content and really consciously try and make stuff that I thought people would really like and would retweet and it feel all good about it. Now it's like ideas come to my head and it's like I just got to get this out of my head onto Twitter and then so I can move about my day.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come up with a dumb idea. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna obsess over this stupid idea. Just put it on Twitter, get it out of here. So it's more of a relief than anything else, which is kind of odd and bizarre in its own way. But in terms of really planning out content, I don't do a whole lot. And in fact, when I'm really prepared for like a Browns game of like, hey, I know this is probably going to happen. And I know that this is going to be a storyline. And I've got like tweets set. And then I shoot those tweets out. It's almost like people know on some level because it just doesn't hit the same way as like a genuine, hey, I just saw this happen. Boom, I got a meme for this. This is it.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether it's a timing thing, even if the timing's right and everything else. If I've come up with it beforehand and really thought about it, and maybe I overcook the thing or something, but by the time it gets out there, it's like, that's okay. But I'll see something stupid on TV and I'll put out the dumbest tweet in my repertoire that I think, and it'll take off. I mean, one of my most famous tweets ever was the United one. And if you recall, the United one had nothing to do with sports at all and literally was after that poor guy got pulled off of that United flight back years ago.
Yep.
Do you remember that? It was like
Yep.
dragged off of the flight, and something in my head said, they have all these different levels that you can kind of join to be different club levels at United. And what if United introduced Fight Club? And I put Fight Club in the middle and just took up the map of one of their planes, put Fight Club in the middle, put that out on Twitter. I think that went 27 million or something. There are classes that are taught on that tweet. I saw one from the University of Cincinnati where they put it up there for customer service and what happens with bad customer service. You'll get bad press like this, and they'll put my tweet up. So every once in a while, I'll get something from a college class where somebody's being taught off of my tweet. Condoleezza Rice wrote a book. In that book, and I've got the book somewhere. I don't know. I
Yeah.
forget the name of the darn thing. she's got my tweet in there under customer service, and I don't know, I didn't
That
even
is
read the book myself, but
unbelievable.
yeah, and it was a completely dumb tweet, and when I sent it, I remember thinking, "This is so cringe," like, to talk like my kids, it sounds kinda weird
Yeah.
when you say the word cringe, but I'm like, This is not gonna be a good tweet. This is gonna be one I'm gonna end up deleting in 10 minutes and being like, "Oh, that was horrible. Why did I even put this thing out there?" And here it takes off, and it's like one of the biggest tweets ever, and it was completely, off, it was nothing planned. There was no thought other than just that fleeting thought of, "Hey, Fight Club. There's a fight. They have clubs on planes. Fight Club. Let's go."
That's awesome. Um, so off of that, you know, you've had a couple of other, pretty memorable interactions. 2 specifically that I'd like to kinda come up with. One is a Russian Twitter bot that was, pretending to be the Tennessee GOP. Am I right? Or did I get that one wrong?
Yeah,
Was
you're
it actually
absolutely
the
right. So
GOP?
that's what got me into the Mueller report. So or Mueller report? I think it's the Mueller report,
I
but
did not know you were in that.
yeah, yeah, because we took down 10 underscore GOP, which was a Russian bot.
Yep.
And basically, and this was something you talk about running gags. I had the running gag for a long time as the Trump and the whole Trump supporters and everybody had this big hang up on the size of his rallies and how big they were
Yeah.
and millions of people were out there. So I would continually put out the Cavs championship parade in 2016 as a Trump rally. And that became a thing. Everybody got it. And it would always go big whenever I would do it. And like Ann Coulter put it on her webpage at one point. It hooked a lot of folks. And one of the accounts that it hooked was this 10 GOP down in Tennessee that was kind of, I guess, the feds were kind of monitoring this account. And when this account stole that picture, then put it off on theirs, then they shut it down. And later on, they'd investigate them, and sure enough, found out they were Russian bot, and they got mentioned in the Mueller report. But all of that was kind of uncovered because of the Cavs championship. So thank you, LeBron James, for bringing that Cavs championship. In 2016, you also brought down a Russian bot, and I happened to be kind of in the middle of that communication that made that happen.
Quick side note, yes or no, do you want them to bring him back? LeBron.
No, I don't think I do.
Okay.
I go back and forth. I'll be honest with
I
you. We got such
yeah,
a young core that it's like, why would you want to interrupt what we got? We're building something cool. We're building something unique. We're building something sustainable potentially. Assuming, we got three big pieces we got to make some decisions on. But I think this is something that we can build towards the future. Why interrupt that right now with
it
LeBron
was
James?
it was
And
fun when it lasted, but
then you gotta bring Bronny in, and then
yeah,
you got this whole thing. I don't think you can go backwards. But you
yeah.
ask me this next week, and I'd be like, "You know what'd be fun? Let's
Yeah, let's do
nostalgia,
it.
let's go." So, I keep going back and forth. I think I'm 90% no right now, though.
The the other notable interaction that you've had, and there might be more that I'm missing if you wanted to talk about those, but, a man by the name of Ian Rappaport, kind of went back and forth with you a little bit, am I correct?
It was Mike Rappaport.
Or Mike
Mike Rappaport.
Rappaport,
Yeah,
I am
close.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wrong
Ian
wrong
Rappaport is a
wrong
reporter.
Rappaport.
Yeah, Mike Rappaport is the quote unquote actor who's in Friends. He was the cat killer in Friends,
He was
and
in
is
Hitch?
also a huge. What's that?
I think he was in was he in Hitch? Was
Yeah,
that the one?
he was in
Yeah,
several
I
small
don't know.
roles, very
Doesn't
small
matter.
roles. Yeah. Uh, Also notable LeBron hater. And, so when the Cavs were on their run and they were playing Golden State every year and seemingly losing every year, him and I would go back forth pretty heatedly because he just he wasn't rooting for Golden State as much as he was rooting against LeBron, and he would show up to all the Golden State games, get like tickets right there on the court, and
Yep.
just be an annoying. And him and I would go back and forth, and he had like a burner account. And in that burner account, he actually doxed me. He put out my home address to the world. So it's
Really?
yeah, yeah. And which is really wild to have like a supposed like Hollywood star, if you want to call him that, but certainly well
Professional.
known professional actor, however you
Yeah.
want to say it, to dox some guy in Granville, Ohio. That was an amazing interaction right there. And, so yeah, I haven't really spoken to him since then, and I think he kind of avoids the whole Cleveland thing because that was a rough ride for him. Even though
Mhm.
Golden State ended up winning, he got the last laugh kind of on that one, but it
Yeah.
was kind of a rough ride for him.
That was
I
due to him
just
pro
and I'll tell you what, interactions. I just had one yesterday. I don't know if you caught this one. This one I'm not not quite as proud of. I don't guess I'm not particularly proud of the Mike Rappaport one, but I see myself as a little bit more of the victim there. In this one, David Njoku, of course,
Yeah,
fabulous tight end for the
great
Cleveland
guy, yeah,
Browns. And yeah, 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 and he did a great job this season. Flacco, I think,
absolutely.
really unlocked his potential. He had some problems with drops. He overcame those. He also famously overcame the s'mores incident where he kind of lit his face on fire.
Yep,
And putting all kidding aside, he played that day. That very next day.
unbelievable.
Yeah, he came in famously wearing a mask, because he had burned his face so badly about that. So it was a really, kind of hard time, and boy, he showed a lot of courage and resolve coming through that. So give him a lot of credit there and a lot of kudos. He has also since that time he has joked about it, and in fact, there was a card that the Browns put out for Christmas where it showed some of the players like in a little Christmas scene by the fire, and they put Njoku real close to the fire, and he
Yep,
he, he tweeted back at him like, "Hey, you got to put me by the fire, huh?" So he's joking with it and everything else. So I put together a series of Cleveland Valentines yesterday for Valentine's Day, and one of them was like Jose Ramirez, "You're a knockout," right? Just cheesy stuff that you'd see on a Valentine, but are very Cleveland themed. Sam Merrill, "I'll come off the bench and give you 5 to 10 strong minutes." Just dumb stuff like that. For Miles Garrett, "I'll hold you all day long." And then
that's
I got to
amazing.
David Njoku, and it said, "Come on, baby, light my fire." And apparently Njoku took exception to that, because he responded UMF to that in a quote tweet. So
That is incredible.
yeah, and those are the ones that are always kinda rough because 'cause you're like, "Man, yeah, I love my team. I have fun with my team, but I love my
Absolutely.
team. I love David Njoku. I love these guys. I want these guys to win. I want these guys to do well." And I think he was kidding too, to be honest with you. But you can't really tell. I mean, he could be pissed as hell at me for all I know. But yeah, yeah, so that kinda went, I think, 3 million views or something like that on that one
That's
and still
incredible.
building right now. So yeah, so I may or may not have beef with David Njoku. And oh, by the way, if I do, that's going to
Good
be the
luck.
shortest fight ever. Have you ever
Good
seen that
luck.
man with his shirt off? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
I
One of my friends made a comment that Myles Garrett never does an interview with his shirt on or closed, and I said,
yeah,
"Yeah, I wouldn't either if I looked like that."
yeah, yeah. It's
There's a yeah.
same with Njoku. I mean, he just destroyed me. Just destroyed me.
Now
So,
it's gonna be a really bad story because I don't remember the names of anybody involved, but there was a guy a couple weeks ago I saw on Twitter that said something he tweeted at a UFC fighter, I think it was, and insulted him in some way, and the UFC fighter's like, "Oh, come say that to my face." And he goes, the guy replied back, he goes, "Oh, no, you'd kick my ass. That's why I said it on Twitter." And the fighter's like, "Yeah, fair enough."
yeah.
Like, "Yeah, I'm good."
That's a lesson on Twitter, by the way. If you're just honest,
Yeah,
and you don't and you're not one of those guys that's got, a huge ego that just comes across on Twitter, you can get away with a lot. I mean, people know who I am. If I'm ripping on a player, sometimes people will get upset, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, he's an unserious man, right? So I'm
yeah.
very unserious when it comes to Twitter, and that's my play area, right? That's where we have fun.
Yeah,
So no
yeah.
need to have a big ego on there. A lot of people do, and that's where people get themselves into trouble and get themselves worked up about social media, I think.
It's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to say sorry
Right.
if needed.
Yeah, I've said
Um,
sorry plenty of time. If I mess up, man, I'm sorry, you know?
so with that, your interactions they have to be significant. Um, you're currently I'm looking at your page right now. You've got 575.8 thousand followers, and you follow 575.6 thousand of them.
Yeah,
So you manage an incredibly large audience. How do you manage that? And then also, are there a lot of blocks and a lot of mutes involved as well? Or do you just let it go?
it's a great question. So one of my I have very few philosophies, and I don't wanna be like the guy, like, "This is my craft, and here are my philosophies," but
Yeah.
I do have a couple of hard and fast rules, and number 1 is normally I'll follow back anybody, 'cause I don't care. You know, I remember when I was really small on Twitter, and it'd be, like, really cool to get a verified account to follow me back when, once again, you didn't just buy verification, it would
Yeah,
be a cool thing.
verification meant something.
Or just even getting a follow, you know? And you'd be out there putting some stuff out there and you get a few followers a day. That's pretty darn cool. And it'd be really cool to get one from a verified. So I was supposed to like, hey, what I'm trying to do here is like build a community here, you know, build not so much an audience, but like a back and forth. So I'm gonna
Sure.
follow everybody. And people say, well, what's your ratio and stuff? I don't care. At the end of the day, I just want to create content. I don't
Yeah.
care what you think of my account. What you'll think of my account is the content that I put out there. If the content's crap, then you're going to think my account is crap. If the content's good, then I think the content's real good. And then you may look at the followers and go, huh, I guess he follows back everybody. And some people will say, hey, there's a man of integrity. That's one of the things that they take now on Twitter. Other
Yeah.
people will say, well, you're not managing the gap very well. You must not be that popular for real. People are just following you back because you follow them. I don't get into that garbage. I just try and create as large of an audience as I can and as large of a conversation as I can with folks. And that way, I've always got, you mentioned those interactions. Those interactions never happen unless you have, you know, kind of an economy of scale when it comes to an
Yep.
audience. And once you achieve that, then anything can happen. Today, I sent out a happy birthday to Mark Price. Mark Price quote tweeted me back, "Thank you." It meant something to Mark Price. Mark freaking Price cared
Yeah.
that Reflog sent out. I was like, that is so cool. Not only that, Georgia Tech, then the school that he went to, retweeted it. And it's like, that's still cool for me. I still enjoy that kind of stuff. So that's part of the reason I build it. Now, one of the downsides you get is you do get plenty of trolls, right?
Oh, yeah.
My second philosophy here, ultimately, I don't block many people at all. I don't block anybody. I kind of let everybody take their shots at me. I'll mute people just because, you know, you get those people who are always asking for things or you get tagged in too much. So I'll mute those people, but I don't block anybody. The hardest time that I had going through this was during the parade because you
Yeah.
definitely had a strong contingent, strong and very vocal contingent of people who didn't like the parade. And they were kind of led by Tony Rizzo up there on ESPN Cleveland. And Tony Rizzo's exact quote was, I'm going to get that guy. I'm going to come to that parade and I'm going to mow him down under my tires.
Wow.
And so he kind of put
He
a
he
little
went
threat
for it.
out there. And what was great about this is that I was riding around. This was on the Browns official post game and I was riding around with my kids. Listen to this. I was like, "Hey, kids, they're talking about the parade. They're talking about your dad." And then all of a sudden, Rizzo goes on his little rant saying how he's going to go and take down all the parade goers, including myself. So that
Yeah.
was fun explaining to my kids. But anyway, that got people kind of riled up. So I had a lot of people, you know, calling me a fake fan or
Mhm.
that I'm not a real Browns fan. I'm actually a closet Steelers fan.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
of course.
and that I'm embarrassing Cleveland. I'm embarrassing the city. I'm an embarrassment to my parents. I'm an embarrassment to anybody. It got so bad that I did get a couple of death threats at one time. But I didn't block anybody, and I wasn't going to give anybody that satisfaction. And I fortified myself pretty good that I can scroll by just about anything. And even these days, when somebody catches me, I take that extra breath and kind of walk away. And usually, you know, any anger I have goes away pretty quick and dissipates pretty quick because after all, it's just Twitter
Yeah.
and it's people in their basements a lot of times, and it's
Yep.
people who have lives that are, you know, so important that they spend most of the day on Twitter ripping on people.
Exactly.
So it's like,
Exactly.
okay, if I step back, I say, I think of the audience, think of the people that are tweeting at you. Now, if I can have fun with it at the same time, if I can take a dig at them, make
Yeah.
it funny, then I'm going to take that dig. But my other unwritten rule is I generally I won't go after my own kind, meaning I won't go after Cleveland fans.
Yeah.
So people will rip on me all day unless I'm doing it creative and kind of in fun. I won't go after Cleveland fans. I just, you know, it's one of those things where it's like a family. Now, if you're a Steelers fan ripping on us, I'm going to go after you all day long. But if
Absolutely.
you're a Cleveland fan ripping on me, that's a personal thing. That's not that interesting to anybody else. So I try and kind of scroll past it.
Yeah. So, apart from Twitter, you kinda mentioned you've ventured into podcasting, you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, what was the first one that you did, and what really how did you kinda decide to do it, or was it just kind of a, "Yeah, this seems fun, let's do it?"
I kind of backed into it, to be honest with you. It was something that was top of mind, because once you get to a certain size, I guess on Twitter, people start asking, "Well, are you going to have a podcast?" Because everybody's got a podcast, right?
Oh,
We're on a
absolutely,
podcast right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
A fantastic one, by the
I
way. Into
appreciate
into
that.
the stands. Everybody's got to check this out. Fantastic guest this week here on Into the Stands. But and so another guy, Matt Allaire, who is a friend of mine. He's from Cincinnati. Him and I kind of collaborated for a while on a podcast. I had a friend Bree, I had Cleveland Cam. We did a kind of a form of a podcast. And then that final one was where Dave came to me and Dave said, "Let's do this post game show for the Browns." And I said, "Absolutely not, Dave." He goes, "Well, what if I send you a mic and I send you a high definition camera and a green drop background so that we can make this thing happen?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Then I'll do it." And sure enough, like a day later, it all shows up at my house, and I'm like, "Oh man, now I feel like I'm roped into this thing." And so it kind of started from there, and then we had fun with it, and then it grew from very humble beginnings to Bernie Kosar standing in his driveway outside our studio in Dave's garage. So
That's
pretty wild
incredible.
ride. Yeah.
So so how do you feel about being seen as, you're a representative of Cleveland sports? How do you feel about that, and do you feel a responsibility with that? Or do you not feel that way?
I'm not particularly comfortable with that at times. You know, I think of myself as a fan, and everybody, we have such a diverse fan base. There's
Oh,
no one
absolutely.
person who represents the fandom,
No.
and don't even try. And that's one of the things that I was very careful of when we had the parade of like, hey, this is the way I think of the parade. This is what I kind of envision. There were a lot of different people with a lot of different ways that they thought about that parade and enjoyed it. And of course, you had the haters as well. And
Yep.
I was very open to whatever. Hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to raise some money for charity. I think it's a fun thing. I also think it's a cathartic thing. I also think it's a protest. I think most people get that, especially in this world of social media. But if you don't, that's fine too. But yeah, I'm trying to remember what the original question was. I get started again on on these tangents.
Well, I
Um,
mean, talking about Cleveland fans, what is it that
yeah,
makes, in your opinion, the Cleveland sports fan community so unique? Because
that's
let's
right.
be honest,
Talking for the
there's
fans. That's right. Talking for
nothing
the fans.
there is
It's been a long day.
nothing there's no city in the world, as far as I'm concerned, that has fans like Cleveland.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it really comes down to it's family for Cleveland. I think that, and once again, I'm speaking for myself, not for all fans, but from my observations and from my own family, watching sports, whenever I think about, my favorite times being at Browns games or watching Browns games or being at Guardians games or watching Guardians games or the Cavs, it's always with family or it's with friends. It's always interwoven into what you're doing socially and really the fabric of Cleveland, the fabric of your locality there. And I think there's a certain sense of us against the world. Of course, Cleveland against the world is kind of a famous thing. But there's always that sense we're always the underdog. And when you're the underdog and you're the underdog with other people, you don't forget that. You get a sense, you get that galvanizing force together. And it feels like a family, and that's the reason I don't turn on Cleveland fans. It's like we can rip on our own teams in Cleveland, but if you're from outside of Cleveland or outside of Ohio or outside the fandom of Cleveland, then you can't rip on us. We can
No.
rip on ourselves, but you
Yeah,
guys can't. It's
absolutely.
just like my family. I can rip on my brother all day long.
Yeah,
You rip on my brother, then we've got an issue. And that's what it is, right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, almost done with you here. I promise I'll let you go here soon, but,
Sound like the rest of the world.
just
Almost done with you. All right, I get it.
normally I don't talk about the teams and the sports that my guests work and cover, but you
Well, it's
seem to
good. I don't
be
cover anybody.
a
I'm
heck
not
of
on
a
the beat of
fan
anybody.
and enjoy talking about them. So, quick quick responses here.
Okay.
Um, what are your guesses for, or your predictions for Browns, Cavs, and Guardians coming up? So, Cavs are having a hell of a season.
Yeah.
What do you think we're gonna do to end the year here? And then what can fans look forward to as far as, results from the Guardians and the Browns?
You know what? I'm gonna go high on the Cavs because I figure why the hell not? Life is
Absolutely.
short, right? So
Yeah,
I say we're going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
okay.
I'm gonna go that far. I don't think we make the finals,
Boston's
but
tough.
Boston is tough, and if we make the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, I'll just be blown away. That would
Yeah.
be fantastic, and I think we got a shot. I think we got a shot. We're obviously the 2 seed right now. I like the young core that we've got. I like the fact that we've got so many different weapons on this team right now.
It's so
Now
much fun to watch.
it is. Now we go cold like we did against the Bulls there, and it gets a little bit choppy, but
Yeah,
I think that JB Bickerstaff is going to be getting this team ready. You know, we just had Mobley coming off injury, Garland coming off injury. You're still trying to figure out the roles of everybody. You got Struess as a starter. He's very up and down right now since those guys have been back. What's it going to be like down low with Mobley and Allen? Those are all questions we got to figure out, but those are good problems to have because we've got a lot of talent. I think JB figures it out. I think we get rolling right into the playoffs, and hopefully we're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals on that. For the Cleveland Guardians that are going to be coming up,
pitchers and
I
catchers
predict
this
that
week.
yeah, that's right. That's right. In fact, the first game in MLB was being played today, I think.
Was
And
it
you're going to
really?
have like a half slate tomorrow. So games are already starting to get played.
That's
I
crazy.
predict the Guardians are going to go from green seats to blue seats this season. We're pretty
Yep.
excited about that in Cleveland. That was big.
I was a little
We're also
worried
going
at
to,
first. The first picture I saw, they seemed like very bright blue,
yeah,
almost like Blue Jays blue, and I was worried, but I think it was
it's
just
a
a
more muted
picture.
blue.
They seem to be toned down a little bit.
Little muted blue there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Vermilion blue. Um, And then we've got some nice spaces up there for families. But in terms of on the field product, we've got a young team. And boy, it sounds like a broken record with Cleveland teams. You got a young team. We've
I'm a
got some
Jackets fan,
pitching,
I get it.
young pitching. Hopefully, we keep Bieber around. Tristan McKenzie's going to have to step up because he's the 2 right now. He's eventually going to be the 1 when we get rid of Bieber, whenever that's inevitably going to happen. But we don't have any hitting. We really don't have any hitting at all. You know,
No.
we're going to rely on Jose. We're going to rely on Naylor, and then nothing from the outfield. We got the younger Naylor, Bo Naylor, coming up. We um, brought in Austin, the catcher who we just signed in the
Hodges?
offseason, the old guy,
Oh, no.
um, Hedges.
Yeah, Hedges.
Yeah, Austin
Hedges.
Hedges. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Boy, oh boy, it's been a long day. Who we signed? Who's basically just going to be another coach who we signed for a lot of money there, but
Yep.
he's a fan favorite as well.
Yeah.
But you look at the division. The division's not very good. So even though we're not going to be very good offensively, uh, we're going to rely heavily on our pitching, and we're going to rely on young guys to then generate runs. The rest of this division doesn't scare me. So maybe we make a run. At least we keep this thing interesting late into the
Yeah.
summer. That's what I'd literally like to see. I don't think this is a playoff team, to be honest with you. I don't think that we're going to make any moves that are going to make us a playoff team. I think we're part of the process for a rebuild. So everybody enjoy those new blue seats if you're
I
going
don't
to the
think there's
green seats.
anything more boring than meaningless baseball.
Well, unless you're at the ballpark. If you're at
No,
the
yeah.
ballpark, it's a sunny
Yeah,
day. Think of where we're at right now. We're in the
that's
middle of
true.
February, right? In
That's
Columbus,
true.
Ohio. How nice would it be to go out to Huntington Park right now, have a beer, have a soda, have a hot dog, have some chips, have some peanuts, and just
Listen to the
be
best PA
watching.
announcer in
That's
baseball, Big
right.
Matt.
Shout
Little shout
out
out there.
Father Panda. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, baseball that when you're out of it, it is a little bit rough. I will
Yeah.
admit to that, but it is funner when you're there. And then finally, we get to the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to have Deshaun Watson back there as the signal caller next year. Joe Flacco is going to be gone. I'm pretty darn sure of that, unfortunately. And now all bets are off when it comes to Deshaun Watson. We have been giving him the pass of, well, he's got rust, you see. He hasn't played much, so he's got all this rust. You get Joe Flacco comes off of his couch, steps right into the ball game,
Yep.
and leads us to the playoffs. The excuses are gone. I'm sorry.
Incredible.
And people hate it when you say, well, he's 20, you're going to bring up the $230 million. Well, yeah, yeah, we are,
Yeah,
because this is
because
a cap league. And so
that's what
you've
we're
got to,
paying
you got
for.
to figure out how that you're going to allocate those funds. We allocated a crap ton of those funds to our quarterback position and have gotten zero. We got a half of football against the Ravens, which was magical,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's all we've gotten so far out of him. And Joe
But for that
Flacco gave
much,
us
we need to be getting
way
more.
more. than what, yeah, the Deshaun Watson has given us. So that's going to be big. I want to see what we do at the receiver position. I think we need some upgrades there. I love David Njoku, despite my Twitter. I do love you, David Njoku.
It's hard
Um,
not to love him.
and that's right.
He's such a great guy
Yeah, and
on and
taking
off the field.
shots with the fans, and I
Oh my
mean,
god.
after the game, it was,
Celebrating with that
it,
kid, that video of him celebrating with the kid
yeah,
was yeah,
he's fantastic. He's
it's great.
fantastic. And now with the line, obviously Bill Callahan leaving, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
That's gonna be tough. You know, we had a lot of injuries last year along the line. We were able to cobble it together, keep old man Joe Flacco upright, and he was able to lead us to the playoffs. And now you got Callahan gone, going and with his family and going to coach somewhere else. So we're left with, inexperience there and some questions along that line. And that's really been kind of one of the solid parts of the Cleveland Browns. So that concerns me right there. And then defensively, obviously, we had a very good defense last year. That didn't take to the road very kindly, though. We really couldn't take the show on the road. We saw that against the Texans. So we've got to improve that. We've got to improve the secondary play there. I've really put a microscope on Greg Newsome for next year. I think we got
Yeah.
to do a little bit less dancing and probably a little bit more covering. I think that would be great. And don't let a rookie like C.J. Stroud. And I know he was fantastic and Buckeye pride, by the way. But you can't let him in the playoffs then just carve you up after having the season we did defensively. So, still got some questions there. But having said all that, I'm not blown away by anybody in the division with the exception of the Ravens.
Yep.
The Ravens are going to be good once again. I know the Bengals are getting back Joe Burrow, but I think that's going to be a classic battle back and forth for us and them. I think we can edge them out ultimately. We'll see what they end up doing with their wide receiver situation. They have some monetary concerns that they got to figure out right now. Steelers don't even know who their signal caller is going to be next year. They're going to
Yeah,
move
I'm
on
not
from
worried
Kenny
about
Pickett.
them.
Yeah, maybe they bring in Justin Fields. I think that would be interesting if that
Yeah.
happens from Chicago. I think that's kind of a Hail Mary, but if that happens, I think that definitely makes the division a lot more interesting. But I think it's going to come down to us and the Ravens, and it's going to be a matter of us getting past Lamar.
Yep.
And I think our defense has been built to stop a guy like that with JOK back there and some of the other things that we've instilled. And, we've got to show that we can do it now. That's always the problem with Cleveland Browns teams. Even when we've gotten close, it's taking that second step because we haven't dealt well with expectations. The difference
Yep.
between the Browns season now and what we had really prior to Deshaun Watson is you didn't have any expectations. Then even with Deshaun, it's like, what do we got there? And then when you have Flacco come in, then you really don't have a whole lot of expectations. And oh, by the way, we still make the playoffs. Oh, that's nice. We're the plucky story right now. Well, what happens next year when you say, okay, the plucky story turns into we have real expectations for you? That's where we've been unable to take that extra leap. And that's where the Browns are going to have to go for next year. And as of right now, hey, why not? Put my money on the Super Bowl for the Cleveland Browns because we all want to be optimistic in the offseason. Browns Super Bowl guaranteed next year. You heard it here first.
Love it. I'll put my bet in now.
Hey, I am doing that. I said that on my show. I'm going to put that down on the futures. I cannot believe that we're down there with the best or the chance of going to the Super Bowl, the same as like the Bears and the Falcons right now.
Horrible.
There's
That's
some
horrible.
disrespect going on right now in the league, and I don't like it. But I'm still going to put my money down on my Cleveland Browns. It'd be so much fun this time of year from now, walking away with a big haul and Cleveland Browns winning the Super Bowl. I can't even hardly think of it. It'd be amazing.
All right, so final question.
Yeah.
Kind of. What is the most unexpected or surprising thing that's happened to you since starting the account? If there's one specific thing, what would it be?
That's a tough question. I think it would probably go back to it'd have to go back to Bernie Kosar. Like I said, telling that story of being a 7-year-old at Old Cleveland Municipal Stadium, sitting there in my seat, watching Bernie Kosar on the field and idolizing the man. I mean, you're talking about having posters up in your room, talking
Yep.
about Bernie Kosar. And even though I lived up there in Akron and I lived in Bath, a lot of my friends, I had one friend who was a Denver Broncos fan, so you can imagine that was pretty rough going to the bus stop, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about John Elway all the time. I had a couple of others that were Browns fans. I had like a Dallas Cowboys fan and a Miami Dolphins fan. And, they're talking about guys like Marino and John Elway, and I'm there just fighting for my guy Bernie Kosar, and I would be the lone voice saying, "No, Bernie's the best quarterback in the league. You guys know what they're talking about. Who's this Dan Marino guy? I know he led them to the Super Bowl, but what's he done lately?" Conversations like that, albeit somewhat misguided, but man,
Yeah.
I always had stars in my eyes for Bernie Kosar, and to go from there to last year, I got a call from Bernie Kosar. He said, "Bro, hey, we need to go down to East Palestine." I said, "What?" He goes, I used to play ball there. I played when I was playing football back in the day in high school. I used to play at that stadium. Those people need me." I said, "Okay, Bernie, what how does that involve me?" He goes, "Well, I need a ride." And sure enough, they held a city hall there in East Palestine, and of course, this is after
Yep.
the train derailment
Yep.
down there, and they had a city hall for all the people that were affected by this, and they brought in none other than Aaron Brockovich. Aaron Brockovich, of course, of fame for going after all kinds of different causes,
Mhm.
famously portrayed by Julia Roberts. And I go down there. I'm at the city hall with all these people kind of huddled around and just waiting. And sure enough, Bernie Kosar shows up, and I walk in with Bernie Kosar, and it's like walking with the president when you walk into a room with that guy. And we walk right down to the front, right to the stage. This auditorium's filled with people, and walk right up to Aaron Brockovich. And just in that moment, I'm going, what is going on here? I'm a Twitter troll. And here I am with Bernie Kosar, and Bernie Kosar's sister was there as well. And she's a big Aaron Brockovich fan. And that's part of the reason that he also wanted to go there. And so it was like the four of us. And I'm just like, who's the odd man out here?
Yeah,
Aaron
one of these
Brockovich,
things does not
Bernie
belong.
Kosar, Bernie Kosar's sister, and Reflog.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as a 7-year old, going back and telling him, hey, by the way, this is going to be in your life at some point when you're in your 40s. I would have been just blown away. So I guess that's probably the thing that's going to stick with me more than anything else is having the opportunity to really meet my idol and get to know my idol
Yeah.
that I had as a kid. And that's something, you grow up, you go through your 20s, you go through your 30s. You don't think, oh, someday maybe I see him. To go from there to actually driving him up to an event and hanging out with him. And we went to dinner afterwards and a double date, which was really cool. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess that would probably be the coolest thing, and I don't know if I've shared that on any podcast before, so you just got that
Got a
nugget from
lit
me.
got an
That's an
exclusive.
exclusive right there.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Alright, so to end every episode, I always ask the same 4 questions. I call them my power play questions, just kinda ties everything together. First, if you could have dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
Oof. Any person, past or present. You know what? I'd be honest. Um, Probably my grandpa Pete.
Love
And
it.
he passed just a few years ago. But if I'm only spending a night with somebody, I think I'd want it to be family. More so that I'd like to say Abraham Lincoln or one of those. But I think at the end of the day, I'd just like to sit down there and have a meal with my grandpa Pete.
Love it. What is your favorite sports venue that you've been to?
Ooh, that's good. Uh, I'll tell you what, this is really Homer, but it's just such an experience that people don't understand until they come down here and see it. And that's the shoe.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole experience, and you gotta take it not just as a venue, but just that whole experience. You've gotta take it in, going to Skull Session, being
Yeah.
out there with the people, being out there early on a Saturday, then stumbling up to that stadium and being there with 100,000 people in attendance
100%.
for a big game. Unbelievable. I went to Ohio State, Michigan. I went to Urban Meyer's last Michigan Ohio State game, and that was just fabulous, just
Yeah.
fantastic. We had pretty good seats sitting down there, and I was with my grandfather, with my father, with my uncle, and it was one of the most magical times that I've ever been at any sports venue. So I'll go shoe number one.
And it really is so, like, me being, doing the scoreboard, I'm up in the press box. I get to the game, I go upstairs, I'm in a box, I'm not exposed to any people or any
Yeah.
sound. Like, we keep our windows closed, like, there's no sound, and so I had never been in that stadium not empty. I've been in there plenty of times when
Oh
it's
yeah.
empty, been in the bowl and all this stuff, but man, I'll tell you what, I went down this year. I made myself go down for before the game started when Tom Snyder, new PA announcer, started doing his reads for the day, and it was it's amazing how much that building, I guess I'll still call it, comes
Yeah.
alive.
Oh, yeah.
And you
Yeah.
could just feel like the history and everything like that in there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, what TV show are you currently watching or binging?
Oof. You know what? If I'm gonna be honest, I'm back to Arrested Development. I started it back over. I didn't couldn't find anything like relevant right now that I really wanted to watch. And right now I'm in kind of that mode of just turn my brain off, watch some funny TV. So I'm
Yeah,
back to Arrested Development. Yeah.
I've never seen that. I need to watch that.
Oh my god. You gotta watch Arrested Development. That is absolutely fantastic
I will.
show.
I'll start that tomorrow.
It reminds me, I mentioned my mom's side of the family in Chicago. There are elements of that show that reminds me a little bit of that family. So I see some family members in some of these characters, and I think
Mhm.
it's just hilarious the way it plays out. So it yes, go and see Arrested Development. It's on Netflix. I don't get any money for this. Make sure you check that out.
I will do that. Final question. They're making a movie about reflog in your life, and you
Oh,
get to pick who plays you. Who are you picking?
well, this gives me a chance to do a flex here.
Yeah.
The guy who follows me on Twitter, Ryan
Oh,
Reynolds, would have to be the guy who
are you serious?
he does, he does. So there's another story for you. So I put out this meme, Free Guy. He did the movie Free Guy,
Yeah.
and the poster of that is him kind of walking down the street and just totally oblivious to the world around him. He's just a happy-go-lucky guy, and around him you've got like fighter jets blowing up buildings and explosions and all kinds of calamity going on, and he's just kind of walking through. And one of the memes that I used to like to make is I'd make him into a Browns fan. And after a Browns win, that's what you feel like, man. No matter what else is going on in the world, you're just happy go lucky walking
Yep.
down the street. And so it was the perfect meme. And I put it out there and I tagged him. And he made the comment. He liked the meme. He liked what I had done there. But when I had changed the meme, I put him not only in all Browns, but as opposed to holding his fish, which is what he's doing in the movie poster, I put him holding like a bottle of Jack Daniels. And he didn't have any problem with alcohol in there or anything else. The problem was it wasn't his alcohol. He
Oh,
wanted
no.
aviation gin in there. He
Yeah.
said, "What are you doing? That's my brand." And the aviation gin people like reached out to me. And so I changed the meme. So if you ever see it, and I may use it again, who knows? If you see
Yeah.
that come out, you'll see he's holding an aviation gin bottle as opposed to a whiskey bottle in there.
That's incredible.
And his marketing people were good enough to send me some of the gin, send me I don't see any sitting around here, send me, like, hats and all kinds of swag from 'em, and, my mom still likes to gloat because I gave the gin to my mom. I'm not a gin drinker, and I gave it to my mom, and she still gloats that she got that from Ryan Reynolds, so there's a good memory for you. Ryan Reynolds would have to play Reflog in the movie.
That's so great. That's awesome. So why don't you let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can hear you, and anything else you got going on?
You can catch me at reflog_18 on X or Twitter. Check us out, the Big Play Network. We got all kinds of shows out there. We got the Big Play Cleveland show. That's on Mondays at 9. You can also catch us on Bally's TV. Catch us on iHeart or wherever you go to get your podcast. That's the Big Play Cleveland show.
Awesome. Chris McNeil, everybody, Reflog 18. I
Thanks for
appreciate your
having
time,
me
sir.
into the stands. This was
Yeah,
fun, Dave. Thank you.